Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Get Your Popcorn podcast. I'm your host, Holly Holiday, and today we have a very special guest joining us for our review of Heat. I've got Drew Deeds, who's on TikTok as Mr. Movie Guy. So, Drew, can you introduce yourself and tell everyone about your background?
Hey, Holly, thanks for having me on. Like I said, my name is Drew. Just a fellow movie fanatic from Oklahoma and kind of joined the TikTok community to hopefully find some people that love movies, but also collect movies like I do. And been working out really well so far, really formed some pretty awesome friendships.
I like will stand by the film talk community is amazing and so welcoming and so like excited to chat about things and deep dive, and there's so many like physical media like connoisseurs and collectors that always are showing off their
Mm.
cool stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool.
When did you first remember finding a love of movies?
Pretty early, of course, back showing my age back in the day of VHS, having the clamshell Disney VHS tapes and just watching all those like Lion King, Aladdin, and then when I was able to finally see the 1990 Ninja Turtles movie, I was born in '88, but took a little bit before I could finally comprehend stuff like that. But movies like that, it just made me feel like I was in my own little world and could just have whatever imagination I wanted, and it was just a really good feeling, and kind of just ran with it from there.
Yeah, same. I'm wearing an Aristocats t-shirt right now. Self-proclaimed Disney adult. So I totally get what you mean. There's this like film is just like this little way to like escape into like a little world. I mean, probably similarly like to how you felt about the Ninja Turtles. For me, it was like The Princess Bride. I
Mhm.
was like, I'm just gonna, and I still do as an adult. I'm like, I'm just gonna deep dive into this when I don't want to think about anything.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Is there a movie in particular that kind of changed the concept of what you thought a movie could be? You know, from more of like an entertainment to being like, whoa, like this is like, I don't know, just hits you. Like this is different. This is incredible.
Yeah, I was a little bit older when it came out, but when Prince of Egypt came out, I was just really impressed with the art style. Even though they were video or like sorry, voice actors, they seemed very natural fits, and just the drawing style, the music. There's something different about that movie compared to like watching stuff like Toy Story or Lion King. I was just very like I was still very little, but I didn't move that entire movie. I was very encapsulated, very focused. My parents were even baffled how well I sat through that movie, and that was kind of then I was like, I really like these. I really like movies. This is kind of blowing my mind how well this is put together, and I basically just craved more of it after that.
Yeah, that movie is stunning, and, like, just from an animation aspect alone, like, just like, you could turn it on you could mute it and just watch it. It's so
Mm,
beautiful.
absolutely.
And, what makes a movie good to you?
Well, writing is definitely important. If it's got really bad writing, it's very easy for me to check out. But good cinematography and actors who actually look like they want to be there, you can definitely count. I'm kind of blanking on one right off the bat, but sometimes you'll see a movie where somebody clearly is there for a paycheck and not really there for the love, as it were. And so when those things kind of meld together, it's a really fun experience.
Absolutely. And so before we get started on Heat, I ask all my guests the, Inside the Actor Studio questions. I don't know if you ever watched that show,
Oh yeah,
but it's a big part of my childhood. I always wanted to sit on that stage, so now I do this. Drew, what is your favorite word?
phenomenal. There's something about it just kind of rolls off the tongue, and I really like it.
What is your least favorite word?
I struggled with this. I really because I try not to dive too far into like curse words or
Ugh.
just vulgarity, but I found one online, bulbous.
Bulbous.
I don't like it. It sounds
No, I always think of that like a nose description. What turns you on creatively?
just finding um just finding something that people can get really behind. Like I have made friends with a couple people on TikTok that also collect physical media and just kind of talking about like how early they started collecting and kind of what they look for. And because I'm of my friend group here in Oklahoma, not very many of my friends collect physical media. And so getting to not only find people that like that, but actually like we'll sit there and just talk for hours. And that just really I could be having a really crappy day and that will just really brighten my day. And that just really is an awesome feeling.
Totally. That's actually the way this podcast actually started. Is like I mean, I live in like a tiny town on a tiny island in Canada, so it's not there isn't really anybody in my circle to talk to. So I was like, well, I mean, there's probably people on the internet that want to talk about this. And if not, I'll just talk to nobody. My dad will probably listen to this, but other than that, but yeah, I totally understand that feeling. What turns you off creatively?
That one I've also struggled with. Just kinda I'm very, like I know the internet is kind of a it's kind of a garbage place sometimes, and there's a lot of people wanna talk about certain things, and that just especially if it's certain that just, like, everybody seems to be talking about, regardless if it's politics or, name it. Sometimes when it's something's just so popular and talked about, it kinda just makes me wanna go in the complete opposite direction and just run away.
Totally. What's your favorite curse word?
Damn.
Damn. What sound or noise do you love?
My son laughing. He's only 3, and when he gets really excited about something, he has this really adorable laugh, and it's very infectious. I absolutely love it.
That there isn't a better sound than your kid laughing. What sound or noise do you hate?
This is really very niche, but, like, styrofoam, like, containers, like, squeaking together, it's very off-putting, I can't stand it.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Kinda doing this, if I could go back, I kinda had the idea back when I was in high school of trying to do a YouTube channel talking about movies because no one was really doing that, and I would love to do it now, but the time and energy and money it would take to really get that going, it would just not be a very smart financial decision, but that would make me very happy if I could do it.
Yeah. What profession would you not like to do?
Performing in front of others for whatever that looks like.
Fair enough. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I know it's cliche, but, kinda like it says in the Bible, I would just love to hear, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." That would make me feel really good.
Yeah. Well, I think we should dive into Heat. Normally, I talk
Okay.
a lot about more pre-production and stuff when I'm on my own and casting and blah blah blah. But Heat is a 3-hour movie.
Mhm.
Oh, you and I are just gonna, and we both love it, so I kind of feel like we're gonna go on and on about it. So
Yeah.
that we'll just dive more into it. So I think, like when you and I were trying to decide what to do, and we both sort of discovered how much we like this movie in particular.
Mhm.
What is it about Heat, just sort of in a general way, that sort of grabs you?
Well, it's not just a typical, like, action movie, at least in my opinion. My wife sadly thinks this movie is terribly boring, and that just breaks my heart, but I get it for someone that doesn't love movies like I do, but the cast is so absolutely stacked, and Michael Mann has a very distinct style. It's not a lot of people do something very similar, kinda and then if you look back at, like I recently watched Manhunter and Thief, his vibe in the '80s was just absolutely amazing, and it obviously changes a little bit in the '90s, but his storytelling is very interesting because we get set into the lives of, like, 5 different people.
Mhm.
It's not just, "Oh, we're focusing all on Al Pacino's character or all of Robert De Niro's character." We get sprinkled in with Val Kilmer and Ashley Judd's marriage, Dennis Haysbert getting out of prison, and, just so many characters we get introduced to, and you care about pretty much all of these characters. You even get a little bit of Natalie Portman. I think this was her 2nd movie, and I cared about pretty much everybody in this movie, and I was anybody that I didn't think got a lot of screen time, I wanted more. I know it's an almost a 3-hour movie, but I could have watched probably double that because that's how interesting I thought these characters were.
Yeah, and it's one of those films where, like, at least for me, like, I totally agree with you. Like, yes, technically it is a 3-hour runtime, but like you are like I am like locked in. There's like for being a 3-hour movie, there's not a lot of fat on this film.
Mm-mm.
No filler. Like you need all of these different components, and like even those smaller characters with the fellow who's like getting out of prison, when he spoilers for a movie from 1995, guys, when he gets shot, when he decide he's got that moment, that decision, is he gonna stay working at this job he's gotten after his parole, or is he gonna do one last thing? And then he gets shot. You're like,
No, yeah. I was absolutely gut wrenched when I saw that.
you're like, no, you were so close. Yeah, this film is amazing. And for me, like, and I've talked about this at nauseum, both on the podcast and TikTok, but like Al Pacino for me is just the greatest actor of all time. I love him in everything, even if the film is bad.
Mhm.
But he's like, this is sort of, I think the like pinnacle of Al Pacino where his like acting style changes. Like we see him in a lot of big performances now, post Heat.
Mhm.
But like this is like when he sort of flips from being this, like, quite quiet actor other than in Scarface into, like, this, it just launches him into, like, a different style.
It really is, and I did see something that originally they were gonna have him, have a bit of a coke habit,
Mhm.
which that would fit, but I also kinda like that they didn't include that because then you're just kinda like, "Why are you like this?"
Yeah.
But it's he's always been my favorite actor. I had some people in high school that would ask me my favorite actor, and I would say Al Pacino, and other people would say, like, at the current time, like, George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and they "Al Pacino? Really?" I'm like, I mean, he's the GOAT for me. He always has been.
Yeah, and, like, I really like Al Pacino. I mean, I like all those actors of that generation that came from, like, the actor studio specifically, like,
Mm,
I mean, Robert De Niro is one of them, Jane Fonda is another, who really, like, commit to, like, stretching to different roles. Like, I love
mhm,
George Clooney and Brad Pitt, but they generally just play, like, themselves
mhm,
or, like, a version of, like, just the charming guy, where Al Pacino, he plays, like, Tony Montana, and then it's a Michael Corleone, but that's an absolutely different gangster. And then we see him as when you see him Scent of a Woman, again, we're very different. And then this, and then he plays another cop in Insomnia that's like extremely different from this one. Like it's just, I like that he's in it for like like you said, what you enjoy, like the love of the game.
mhm,
Like you get a feeling that if he was just like a theater actor that worked enough to pay his apartment rent, he would still be doing this.
right,
So this film is technically based on a bit of a true story. Robert De Niro's character Neil Macaulay has the same name, and the detective of Al Pacino's Vincent Han is based on Chuck Adamson, who sort of consulted on the film and then did some based on his memory. Some of the conversations were as transcribed as they could be.
mhm,
And just to go over, Robert De Niro as Neil McCauley. We got Val Kilmer as Chris Chirulis, John Voight as Nate, Tom Sizemore as Michael Chirito, Diane Venora as Justine Hannah, Amy Brennan as Edie, Ashley Judd as Charlene Chirulis. How do you feel about the casting? Any changes that you'd make?
I kinda battled with this. I don't really feel like anybody was miscast, but, like, if you put a gun to my head and said you have to recast somebody, it would be I would replace Kevin Gage as Waingro with Mickey Rourke.
That'd be a great choice.
I think Mickey from that era would have been kind of interesting, but absolutely no shade to Kevin Gage. Anything I've ever seen him in, he's always been phenomenal. But I think Mickey would have brought an interesting perspective as Waingro, just kind of that era that of the mid
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like I said, we won't get too much into the production of the film, but do you know much about how the production was done or anything?
A few things that I remember hearing about when I was a lot younger was they had a lot of off-duty cops as consultants. Most notably, if you've ever watched the OG Law and Order, actor Dennis Farina was a cop before he became an actor. He worked with Michael Mann on LA Takedown,
Oh, yes.
and he was a consultant. And I don't know if this is still true, but for a long time, LAPD SWAT actually used the bank when they take him in the street.
Mhm.
That scene, that entire sequence was used in the LAPD SWAT, like, training classes because it was so technically proficient. They were like, "This is how we would handle this situation in real life." And so, I always thought that was incredibly interesting. That's how much care Michael Mann really took to this film.
I didn't know that. That's really cool. For me, there's actually a great episode of a podcast I love called "What Went Wrong," where they deep dive
Oh,
all the making of the pre-production and the making of the film. So if anybody's interested, go listen to that. I think it came out like in November, but
okay.
it's really good. But my favorite little thing from that, a lot of the actors signed on because they were just excited to work with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino.
Mhm,
And that the 2 guys, like, lived up to their icon status, that anyone that had anything that they needed or acting questions or whatever, both these guys took so much time with, the next generation of actors to make sure that they felt seen and heard and cared for on the set, which you just love when people like that, live up to the way they are in your head.
mhm. I know, I think I saw it said Val Kilmer specifically took the role because he wanted to be able to call Al Pacino Al,
Yeah.
and he wanted to call Robert De Niro Bob for the rest of his life, and he did. So
Yeah.
I thought that's really funny.
And he like, Val Kilmer at this point, he's a huge star, and he's, like, not a like, I've got the billing order here, like, he's 3rd billed, and he doesn't have, like, the most amount of screen time or lines.
No, he's really not in it all that much, and other than, like, when he's yelling with Charlene in the beginning, he's kind of hard to understand. In a lot of the scenes, he talks very soft spoken. I was kinda, like, listening in, I was like, he's not very his presence is very stoic, kind of, as it were, but, if you notice the very beginning scene where he goes to get the explosives in Arizona, I don't know if you notice he has a deformity on his elbow. His
No.
so, he has, like it looks like a bulb on the back of his left elbow. It's very odd. It's like my dad pointed it out when I watched it far too young of an age. I was probably like 9 or 10 when my dad let me watch this for the first time. Because, hey, you notice that? That looks kind of odd, doesn't that? I was like, wow, that's very, I never would have noticed it, but now I can't unsee it anytime I watch it now.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at that. So this film was made on a $60 million budget, and it made back $187 million at the box office. So box office success. And my favorite quote on the reviews was from Roger Ebert, and he says, "It's not just an action picture. Above all, the dialogue is complex enough to allow the characters to say what they're thinking. They are eloquent, insightful, fanciful, poetic when necessary. They're not trapped with cliches. One of the many imprisonments possible in our world, one of the worst, be to be inarticulate, to be unable to tell another person what they really feel. These characters can do that, not that it saves them." I think
I love that.
it sums it up perfectly. So it sits with a 84% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I feel like is unreliable, and then on
Right.
Letterboxd, I gave it 4.3. I gave it a 5 with my, like, Letterboxd review. I got my head all the way up in it.
I gave it a 5. That was an easy one for me. I think it was one of the first movies I logged. Like I said, it's the top I think it's the epitome of the greatest heist movie, and I think it's hilarious that if you watch Ben Affleck's The Town, he's actually watching Heat in one of the scenes in the movie, which absolutely just warmed my heart seeing that.
Well, and there's so much taken too, like the opening sequence of Heat, and then the opening sequence of The Dark Knight.
Mm.
Like, there's no Dark Knight opening sequence without Heat, because it is Heat with the flip. The only difference is that the Joker is smart enough to, get rid of all the other guys in a way that Robert De Niro, you can see him consider and then chooses not to.
Right.
And unfortunately, this was not nominated for any Academy Awards
Mm.
or Golden Globes. Uh,
Mm.
why do you think that is?
Sadly, this year was just absolutely stacked. I actually made notes. You had movies like Apollo 13, Mr. Holland's Opus, and Braveheart all in the same year. And then you also had huge box offices. You had Val Kilmer's other movie, Batman Forever, Toy Story, Congo, Crimson Tide, Seven, and Goldeneye all came out in the same year. And so part of me thinks probably some people had other movies kind of ahead of it. Like I could see Apollo 13. I remember Mr. Holland's Opus had like 5 nominations and won all 5. And then Braveheart just absolutely cleared as well. So I'm sure some people were just like, oh, that's a cute little action movie, but we have this over here. I
Yeah.
don't think that's right, but I could see it.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, so there's so much, like, if you guys haven't seen this movie, almost, like, hit pause now, go and watch the movie, and then come back, because 'cause you'll know that there's so much detail that, like, we're just not gonna be able to get into. So the film opens up with Neil McCauley. He's a Los Angeles professional thief, and he's got his crew of Chris Chiroulis, Michael Chirito, Gilbert Trejo. So this is actually kind of the breakthrough performance of Danny Trejo, and he's so good in this movie.
Mhm.
And Wayne Grove, who we talked about, and they're robbing for
The
these
armored car.
the armored car for these bonds. And it's this pretty intense action sequence where they're switching vehicles and they're masked, and there's so much almost confusion, but you can see this like swiftness and articulation to it. And then at the end, Waingro ends up killing kind of one of these guards for no reason, leading to then they have to kill the other 2 guards to not leave any witnesses to what they're doing. Obviously, Neil is then quite pissed off at Waingro because while he's trying to justify his kill, and then there's a chase with the police officers, and the crew's able to switch vehicles, set a bomb, and kind of blow away all the evidence. What are your thoughts on the opening scene?
There's a lot of precision in that movie. There is a lot of chaos, but it seems like it's very controlled chaos. You know, having Trejo following in the car, listening to the radio, and you know, having the truck or the wrecker there and having the wherewithal to, you know, the shape charge that they blow into the car and like like I said, Michael Mann really took a lot of time and care to get a lot of this right. And you see some heist movies that just look very sloppy and a lot of it's just dumb luck. That's not the case. But this is very timed precision. Like this is their job. Like, and it's a very satisfying heist, as it were. They just get off and then, you know, the bomb they put in the ambulance, that was just kind of the icing on the cake. You can tell they're willing to kill if it's absolutely necessary, but they really don't like to. That's unnecessary, for lack of a better word,
Mhm.
from the police. But it's a very satisfying, opening sequence. It's loud too. I didn't even have it that loud on the TV, but the surround sound kind of like vibrated off the room while I was watching it. I was like, this, you don't see a lot of movies that kind of have all of that all going at the same time. It was very satisfying.
Well, actually, the reason that that happened is there's actually no additional ballistic sounds
Mhm.
used. They used, fully loaded blanks. So,
Oh,
all the gunshots are as loud as actual gunshots would be,
that makes a lot of sense.
which is crazy when you think about it, 'cause like, they have every single take, they have to go and clean out all these cartridges, especially for in the shootout scene that's downtown LA, they
Yeah.
film every single take, and they shot it on location, like, in downtown LA. None of these scenes are shot anywhere on a studio, it's all locations. I've poor, interns and crew that are having to clean up, like, thousands of ballistics is crazy.
Oh, yeah. That was actually one of my fun facts, was that no sound stage was used, and that to me, that I know that was pretty common back then, but it's just impressive that they were able to do all of that just on location.
Yeah, and it's amazing, like, it sort of LA, like, the kind of grimy underground becomes this, like, background character almost in the
Mhm, mhm,
so after that, Neil meets up with Nate, who's a money launderer, and he basically says, "I'll set you up with the guy that you stole the bonds from, and he can buy it back." And then he also tells him about another job that's got this big $10 million payout. Where Neil's like, "Well, I have to think about this. I don't want again too much heat." We're then introduced to Detective Vincent Hanna, and his team is investigating the robbery like a lot of, people in the police force, or at least at this time, he's got a background in, he's either, a Marine or the Army, and he has a very bad relationship with, we learn, his 3rd wife, Justine, who has a daughter who is really struggling mentally.
mhm,
And we sort of, go through and we see how skilled Hannah is as a detective, and he basically, like, is able to walk through the crime scene and re-narrate what we've just seen quite
mhm,
accurately. And they end up talking to an eyewitness who gives them the name Slick, which is said by one of the robbers, and that's kind of their first lead of the film.
mhm.
We then cut back to the truck stop, and this is our first kind of, I think, where we see how kind of scary Robert De Niro's character can be. So much of this performance is so quiet,
Oh, yeah.
and then we get to this where he's basically decided that he's gonna kill Wayne Grove because he's now a liability, and they basically start to, and then there's this, like, just I think a patrol cop car kind of drives past, and they have to stop. This is the opportunity for Wayne Grove to get away.
The scene is interesting. I liked it because, like you said, you get to you see how scary Robert De Niro can be in the scene. I kind of wonder. I don't because I don't like to nitpick my favorite movie, but I always wonder, like, why would you try to execute him right outside the entrance of a restaurant? First of all, where anybody could walk up and see this, and then also kind of we obviously get a little bit of movie magic when he looks up to check to make sure the coast is clear, and Wayne Grove is just magically gone.
Mhm.
Like obviously we have to stretch it a little bit. Like, obviously, he wouldn't have been able to get away like that in real life. So we stretched it a little bit, but God, that scene was scary. What was actually the scariest to me was when Danny Trejo opens the hood or opens the trunk and you see it lined with trash cans. Just the noise that trunk makes when he opens it and seeing the trash bag liner. God, it gave me the chills. It was so creepy to me.
Well, I To me, I wonder too, is this like a slight nod to that scene in Goodfellas when they I can't remember who they whack, but it's Robert De Niro's character Ray Liotta and Joe Pesci, and they have to they're stab that guy in the trunk, and then of course they
Mhm.
have dinner with Joe Pesci's mother.
Oh, yeah.
They're banging in the back, but it sort of to me was reminiscent of that, where I wonder if it's meant to be the audience like this guy, we know this guy can do this.
I didn't think about that, but you know what? I wouldn't put it past him. That actually kind of would make sense.
But yeah, I totally agree with you, especially because we learn, like, how vigilant Neil is through the whole movie, like, he's able to hear, like, a tiny, what is it, foot scrape or something later in the film that tips him off that they're being followed. He wouldn't hear that, Waingro is, like, scrambling and he's not running quietly away, like, he's, like,
Mhm.
going for it.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, it's a little bit of movie magic, but we can forgive it.
Absolutely. We then cut to a scene, with Chris, when he comes home to Charlene, and he basically, tells her about that he's paid off the gambling debts and the bookies, but there's no kind of income on this job, whatsoever. And then there's this scene where, I don't know, when he, like, leaps over the back of that couch to, like, run at her, I was like, "Oh, what are we gonna" like, it's so scary.
I honestly thought the first time I watched that scene, I thought he was gonna haul off and slug her.
Yeah.
That's kinda like that's the loudest we see him get in
Yeah.
that entire movie. Well, other than when he's, like, yelling at him to go on the highway, but he would like, that's another he was scary in that moment, like, the eyes, he just pure rage that he had in that scene. I hadn't really seen that before out of him before. That was an interesting look, to say the
Yeah.
least.
Yeah, it's funny, and then we cut to, like, Charlene is we learn that Charlene's having, this affair that Neil tries to, like, talk her out of, but after seeing that scene of, what we assume then, going forward that there's some domestic violence in this relationship, I was like, good for Charlene. I hope she escapes out of this. Good for her." That was my moment of like, "Mm." And then we learn that Neil is gonna set up this $10 million bank job with Nate. We then see Al Pacino's character, Vincent, he goes to meets with various informants and eventually finds a lead on a guy, and they kept the lead slick by a guy that kind of like lets it slip offhandedly, and they learn the name of Chirito, and then um they're able to run their databases, and they are able to find him. And this is like, for me, the scene where Al Pacino seems like the most coked up through the whole thing.
Absolutely, and seeing a very '80s icon rapper in Tone Loc, that was a nice cherry because Ace Ventura was a big movie of my childhood, and he's also in that, and so seeing that scene just made me very happy with, Tone Loc in it, and, he's actually not a bad actor. He really sold the role. I was very amused at this, like, my cousin or my brother Richard's gonna meet you at 2 a.m. And
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, that's, absolutely chaotic. There's no one want to be a part of that whatsoever.
But that's like a cokehead time though. So Al Pacino, like without hesitation, is I'll be there, and you're like, well, I don't know. I would have to drink like a case of Red Bull to be up at 2 a.m. trying to think clearly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no. Yeah, the Coke habit definitely it tracks kind of the more you go throughout the movie.
Yeah. So then we cut to Neil Neil is about to make the deal with who we learn is Van Zant, to try and buy back the bonds, but it's a setup. But Macaulay was kind of waiting. He had like his crew kind of waiting behind where they were supposed to meet in case there was an ambush. They do a counter ambush, which is like very tense. As we see them parked side by side, and there's somebody sneaking around, and like kind of last minute, Neil sort of notices. And then there's this big kind of shootout. And then afterwards, Neil threatens Van Zant on the phone. And I have to read this because it's one of my favorite quotes of the movie. Neil says, "What am I doing? I'm talking to an empty telephone." Roger Van Zant says, "I don't understand." And Neil says, "Because there's a dead man on the other end of this fucking line."
That was an absolutely chilling scene, just kind of because William Fichtner has always been he's always one of my favorite character actors. I tell my wife because she doesn't remember actors' names like I do, and then I say, well, he's just one of those. You're like, yep, I've seen him before, but just the sheer terror on his face when Neil says that line to him, and then just looking at Henry Rollins' character, just being like, "Why am I in this position? Like, how could you let this happen? Like, he had anything to do with it."
Yeah.
But just the sheer terror on his face was chilling, to say the least.
Yeah, and just, like, another it's a peak because you like, arguably through a lot of this film, like, Neil is so much more likable than Vincent Hanna, who's our quote, unquote, like, "good guy," who seems, like, kind of fine, like, he's got this wife that he, like, seems to not really care about more than his career, and Neil's got this, like, hard line of, like, "I don't want to, like, fuck anybody over," and, like, his, like, line of, like, I have to be able to leave my life in 30 seconds, and I can't do that to a person." To see these little glimpses of, like, "Oh, this man is a stone cold killer." And then we learned that Waingro, in the meantime, is now gonna work for Van Zant, and it sort of is revealed that he isn't just a hitman, that he's actually a serial killer who is killing sex workers, and there's this pretty brutal murder that then, of course, is flagged by homicide, and Vincent Hanna shows up to the crime scene. And there's this great moment where the mother of the victim of the one that's been killed by Waingro, Vincent Hanna kind of like blocks her from going to look at this body. And this part of the film makes me cry every time I watch it. And I think this is just shows like why this isn't just like a typical action movie.
Mhm. It kinda a lot of stuff has really changed how I feel about certain scenes as I've become a dad.
Mhm.
That particularly, because I never wanna have to experience that as a dad. Weirdly, we'll cross the bridge when we get to those parts in the but there's a couple scenes that involve, like, a child,
Mhm.
and it's a traumatic experience, and it just kinda makes me tear up a little bit thinking, like, I don't want any of that to happen as a parent. And that's the scene where they find the sex worker underneath the tarp outside that motel just kinda wrecks you emotionally.
Yeah, we learned that she's like 15.
Mhm.
And like she's not only is this she's like I mean I think sex worker is probably a generous title for what she is like she's involved in like child trafficking um and just the mom and I have a daughter who's the same age as your son and I'm like oh my god like looking at my little baby I'm like what you know what I mean like that's only 12 years like that's 12 years apart like it's not a long time
No.
just how horrible, like, that would be, and then we see this is, like and I think it's like, a lot of first responders for Vincent Hanna is, like, you see, like, "Oh, this man does have a lot of heart, it's just spent here."
Mhm.
And, there's a lot of arguments with his wife, and, like, I don't go into detail or I don't have a lot of notes in detail, where she's basically saying, like, "You have no connection to me," and he's like, "I don't know what you want me to tell you. Like, do you want me to come home and tell you, like, the worst things you've ever seen?" But this is, and, like, you see and that's why I think you see so many, like, firefighters marry cops, marry nurses, like, paramedics, like, because it's this,
Mhm.
like, little language, I think, that unless you're in it, you don't understand.
100%. No, that makes a lot of sense.
So at this point, Vincent's team identifies the rest of the crew. They pop them on surveillance. We see like a very, like you said, kind of Law and Order scene where they like lay it out. They're like, here's the team. Here's what they've got all going on.
Mm.
And they realize that their next hit is going to be a metal depository. And they stake out the team. They have kind of like hidden surveillance, hidden SWAT teams are all hiding in these trucks, and they break in and there's one officer that's kind of careless, makes a noise, and then Neil kind of realizes what's going on. And I thought we could discuss the moment. I think it's one of my favorites of the film, and it's the only time the actors like break the fourth wall and they're looking right down the camera, like Vincent Hanna's looking into the surveillance, and then Neil's looking back out at their surveillance, and like they're looking right at the screen.
Mhm. That whole scene, like, my anxiety was through the roof just that whole time, especially seeing that dude with the glasses. I was like, "I know he's gonna do something stupid." And then, just that pure look on Neil's face, where he was just like, "Nope, nope, that's it, we're done." And you're just like, "Oh my gosh." Like, I hope this dude gets fired immediately. Like, I hope he's working mall security the rest of his life. Obviously, that's an over exaggeration, but just the look on Vincent's face after they get out, he's just kind of sitting there tapping the walkie talkie against his leg and then just walks away. I don't think I could have related more
No.
to him in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just so intense. It actually was a very for me, the very similar feeling to like you've seen The Departed, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, that scene where like they're in the street and DiCaprio and Matt Damon are like ducking around corners trying to, like, find each other in in the fog.
Mhm.
Like, it's, like, that same feeling where you're, like, right on the edge of your seat, and you're like, "I don't even know who I want to win in this moment."
Mhm. No, I 100% agree. I was also kinda thinking of that scene in The Departed when they're doing that buy with the Chinese and everybody's turning their phones off.
Yes.
I was literally like the hair on the back of my neck was, like, standing up that entire scene because 'cause you're wondering, like, what's gonna happen.
Yeah. I s
But, yeah, very much what that scene in Heat was like.
Yeah, so good, and that's just, like, a big credit to Michael Mann's direction of just, like, the way the sequence is just, like, completely just makes your own fight or flight kicking even though you're, like, on the couch.
Mhm.
So Neil aborts the heist, and then, Vincent refuses to arrest them for just breaking and entering because he's worried that they're gonna get let out either on parole or, with misdemeanor or, reduced sentences. And then they continue to surveillance them, and, Neil kind of tricks them essentially to this shipyard where he actually begins to surveil them back, and there's this great moment where Al Pacino kind of puts it all together, and you can see him looking up to where Neil is looking through the camera, and there's a great shot of, like, actually looking through a camera lens at,
Mhm.
Vincent down on the ground, basically, like, waving to them.
That scene, you've seen it in other films. I thought that was a genius move because the first time you watch that scene, you're like, "What is going on? They're clearly not trying to rob a scrapyard."
Mhm,
And then, like, they're not spoon feeding you that it's a trick.
mhm.
Like, you're literally learning that it's a trick when the cops are learning it's a trick. And there's something very satisfying about that to me. Like, I hate when a movie just has to like spoon feed you what's about to happen and what is happening in real time. Like I thought that was very genius of what are we doing here? And boom, there it is.
Well, they're not worried about anyone being on their phone, so they don't have to, like, explain the plot out loud. Because it's
Mm,
1995, like, now with, like, a Netflix film or characters like or I went to see, Deliver Me From Nowhere, which I really liked, but there's these, like, little scenes where they just explain what Bruce Springsteen is going through, and you're like, "No, I'm watching the movie.
right.
You don't need to tell me, I know what he's feeling.
Oh yeah.
You can cut these." But, yeah, it's I love when you find out just as it's happening.
Mhm.
But I watched this with my husband, and he, he's not a big movie guy either. And he's like, as it's happening, he's like, "What's going on? What's going on?" I'm like, Just wait." And he'll do that with other movies too that, like, I've never seen before, and he's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I know the same amount of information."
I've probably been guilty of that, especially if it's a movie that my wife picked. And I'm just like, I have no idea what's happening. She's like, good news. I don't either. So
Oh, yeah, I realize that I'm, like, an asshole to watch a movie with, like, my husband will, like, say anything, I'm like, "Shh." Like, even, like, half the time I'll go to movies by myself, especially if I'm seeing something, like, a little more scary.
mhm.
We went to go see Nosferatu, and I was like, "Oh, you don't know popcorn etiquette for horror movies. Like, if it's quiet, don't eat."
that.
And this is where we kind of see too, like, we get this moment where there's, like, this absolute kind of adoration and mutual respect that both of the characters sort of develop in this moment, which I think is like, I just thought was really, really interesting. Almost like they're inside the same house, but one of them walks out the front door and the other one the back.
I You don't really see that in a lot of movies. Normally, it's just like, "Oh, I hate this guy, and I wanna kill him." Genuinely, you're kind of the thought of, in another life, we'd probably be best buds after work clocking out at work, we'd probably be grabbing a beer together.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of an interesting take. I don't know if I would've come up with on my own.
Yeah, absolutely. Neil then you see a scene of Neil and the crew, and they kinda decide, like, "Okay, we've got all this heat on us," which is they love to say over and over again. "We got all this heat on us, but, fuck it, we're gonna do our one last job, our $10,000,000, and then kind of disappear." We then cut to a scene and I don't know, like, does the LAPD like, I'm not sure how much, like, police budgets are and stuff down there, but, like, the Vancouver Police Department, I don't think is just, like, flying helicopters for fun.
I have no in Oklahoma, I don't really know what their budget is, but, yeah, I have to believe it's probably in like we talked about, probably a little bit of movie magic,
Yeah.
like them flying to Vegas and, involving another city's police department. Probably doesn't happen a lot, but, yeah, it fits, it works.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna I'm not gonna raise an eyebrow over it.
Yeah, so they're, like, tracking Neil's car via helicopter, and they find it, and then Vincent Hanna jumps in a car and pulls him over, and they have this, like, big famous scene in the diner where they finally meet face to face, and we didn't mention it before, but, this is Al Pacino and Robert De Niro's big, like, scene together that had was, like, so hyped up because 'cause they're these, like both these, like, titans of, like, crime films, and they'd
Mhm.
only appeared together in The Godfather Part 2, but, of course, they have no scenes together.
Yeah, as much as they touted this movie, and like I said, it's still my favorite movie, but I don't do they share even maybe 20 minutes together of the 2 hours and 52 minutes of runtime? It's you have the diner scene and then you have the end.
Mhm.
That's it.
Yeah.
But I love the fact I don't feel like it's fairly known. They didn't really rehearse
Mhm.
that scene together. They just shot it. And you can kind of tell, but it works. The dialogue is sharp. Their conversation is interesting. They gel well together. You never would have thought if you had walked up on them, you never would have thought that was their first interaction together. At
No.
least that's the kind of what I got.
And is I think probably their mutual, like, respect for each other as actors, like, translated to the characters quite well.
Mm,
Yeah, I just and both of them are, like they're actors that don't use, like, stand-ins.
mm-mm,
They're sitting with each other for, like, both close-up shots for all of the scenes to really, like, build this, like, kind of connection, and I feel like that translates so well during this, like,
mm-mm,
moment.
mhm,
And I also love that they have this, like, cross, like, in the middle of the film. Like, we kind of almost go, like yeah, they, like, cross over and then go back away from each other just to, like,
mhm.
build up the tension and then pull back. I really liked this, like, moment of understanding between the 2 of them.
What's kind of, I think, even more genius is the scene right after. Al Pacino is walking into the command center thinking, I got him right where I want him. And then he learns that, they dumped all their surveillance has been dumped. And Robert De Niro's basically just giving him the middle finger, being like, I like you, guy, but F you, man, and just like takes off. And you're just like, that has to just hurt the ego.
Yeah. Absolutely, like, he just, like, definitely has, like, much more of a belief in himself and still, like, viewing himself as, like, the good guy and sort of underestimating what Robert De Niro is truly capable of.
Mhm.
And, yeah, and Al Pacino in this moment too, like, he almost, like, a bit, like, trauma dumps on Robert De Niro. He's like, "Yeah, I've got this wife, I can't figure it out, like, my stepdaughter is, like, unwell, like,
Mhm.
I'm on my 3rd marriage, things are not going well." Robert De Niro's like, "Yeah, that's why I don't do this." Yeah, that sounds yeah, it's funny. We then cut back to Waingro, who he makes a deal with Van Zant where he's going to just kill everyone in the crew. And then this is where Danny Trejo's character quits. He's afraid of the LAPD. And this is where we see Macaulay hiring Breeden as the getaway driver. And we've seen a little scene of him previous in the film where he's getting out of jail. He's trying to follow his parole. He's got, I don't know if it's a wife or a girlfriend who's like really excited for him and believes in him and is like really supporting him and is excited about them, even though his new job is like just kind of, an entry level.
Yeah, he's a grunt, essentially. I kinda had a thought of when they're at the diner and, Trejo calls him and says, "I can't shake the tail." I kinda thinking about it, they just talked about how everybody dumped the surveillance, so I kinda wonder if he really was if he was actually still being followed by cops or if it was Waingro and his crew, and that's why he's so scared. I kind of am leaning towards it being Waingro, like, kinda like you were indicating, because it wouldn't make a lot of sense if they truly dumped all the surveillance. Why would the next scene immediately him saying, "Oh, I can't dump the surveillance"?
Yeah, I thought so too. And I thought maybe like upon first viewing, I was like, oh, is he going to start working with the LAPD and like
Mhm,
back out a little bit? Or is he like giving them information? But I mean, yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe it is Waingro that he's sort of sensing
mhm,
too, because spoiler alert, he is the first one to get picked off.
mhm,
Then we cut to the bank heist, and the LAPD have been kind of tipped off that this is what's going to happen, and this is the big kind of famous shootout scene downtown that is just like chaos.
mhm. It's, like, kinda what you said about the rounds being live, well, dummy rounds, but like actual rounds. It makes a lot more sense because it's loud, it's chaotic. it was a little overstimulating for my wife, I feel like, because she's not into these types of movies anyway, and so if something becomes too chaotic, not she kinda, like, checks out
Yeah.
for a second, and I get that, like, there's even the chase sequence, with Tom Sizemore's character, it's so chaotic. Everybody's running around like you're worried somebody's just gonna get absolutely blown away that shouldn't be. My anxiety is through the roof probably through that entire scene.
Yeah, it's very, very disorienting um, to feel, and it feels like so, and they even have, like, I guess they've added, like, kind of the ringing sound on in the background, like, it feels after you, like, I mean, you can probably see in the background, like, my husband hunts, and I've been there for when, like, the rifle goes off, and it is, like, if your earplug are not in, you're absolutely rocked by that.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I can't imagine just, like, and that's like a, a hunting rifle. These are, like, they're shooting with, like, giant guns that aren't even legal in my country, and they're just like, and Al Pacino's just, like, running down the street with, like, an automatic assault rifle. You're like, "Oh my god."
Mhm.
There's, like, children everywhere. It's crazy.
My favorite thing, because it makes no sense, I wonder if she just went off script, is the lady in the grocery store parking lot. She's just sitting there, just doing that, just standing almost completely up, like, upright with her hands on her ears and, like, not taking cover.
Yeah.
And, like, my dad and I, like, one of the first times we watched this, he's just like, "How dumb is this lady? Like, she's about to just get her whole life rocked." I'm like, "Yeah, who knows if that was scripted that way or not."
Well, yeah, I don't know, but there is, like, they used to call it flight or flight, but it's actually fight, flight, or freeze. And so one of the things they teach you is simulation drills when
Mm.
you're practicing these things. Like, that is my, like, initial instinct, is just to be like, "Fuck." And, like, my brain like, stops. Like, if you're not used to it, you're just I just, like, locked up.
It makes sense.
That would be me just being like, "Oh no, there's guns." I'll just hopefully not get So during the shootout, Chris kills an officer, um, while Breeden and Chirito are both shot and killed, and Chris escape, although Chris is wounded. Um, Neil takes him to a doctor and kind of leaves him there with Nate, and then they think that maybe Trejo is the one that tipped them off to the police. So Macaulay goes to find him, and he is been kind of brutally murdered, or like almost murdered and left to die by
That it's obviously the way that he's left is kinda gross, to look at, but well, someone who's not a first responder probably would think that looks gross, but just him saying, like, "My wife's gone, just end me." Like, God, that just wrecked me. Absolutely wrecked me, and just seeing that look on Neil's face the very next scene, you're just like, "Oh, he's gonna wreck stuff up."
yeah, he's about to come unglued.
Mhm.
'Cause he keeps himself at, like, through the film, we see him keep everybody at, like, such an arm's distance. We didn't mention it, but he also develops a relationship with a kind of a much younger woman during this time too, and he's, kept everything. I gotta be able to leave everything in 30 seconds flat, and then, like, looking at this guy as he's dying and having to kill him, having to kill this guy that I think he probably considers his friend, is just, like,
Mm.
so against his code.
What's so interesting, I think, about De Niro's character is he is supposed to be this very methodical, very I follow these rules in life. But the more the movie goes, the more sloppy he gets.
Mhm.
Like falling in love with Edie. And then, when Nate's like, I'm sure you're not going to want to go after Wayne Grove, just get out of here. And then just like he just like flips the switch and is like, do it, screw it, I'm going to go do it. I'm like, you have been so methodical this entire movie
Yeah.
and just you slightly are coming more unglued and not in a good way the further we're getting. But, I think that's what kind of makes it a little more interesting that he's not just so robotic.
Yeah, and I think it is like a almost an archetype of a lot of, like, criminals as they get, like, successful, as they start to pull stuff off more and more and more. They always, like, have this moment where, like, we talked about in Goodfellas or whatever, like, there's this peak, and then it all starts to become unglued.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so this is the moment where Macaulay decides he's gonna go after Wayne Grow, but he decides that he's gonna bring Edie along with him for the ride, and then they're gonna escape and go to, I think, Tahiti, I think it is?
PG.
Fiji. Fiji. my husband and I were, like, looking at how much it costs to go to Fiji and Tahiti afterwards, so I think that's why I got confused. We're like, "Oh, this sounds pretty there," and we looked at it, we're like, "No, that's not a vacation in our tax bracket." Uh, yeah, so they're starting to flee, and this is intercut with the police. They go to visit Charlene, and they're trying to get her to sell out Chris. And they're basically saying like, "Do you want this for your son? Like, you need to cooperate with us." Like all this stuff, and we think she is going to sell out Chris as he's coming up, and she's standing outside, and she kind of gives this very like subtle like hand signal, and he walks away.
As sad as this is, because he's obviously Chris is obviously not a good person. We get that. He's obviously not treated Charlene well. He's a gambling junkie. I get all that. And I don't know, maybe it's because I have a son,
Mhm.
but when the look on his face when he has to not only leave Charlene, he has to leave his son for the rest of his life, I couldn't help but tear up a little bit just because, like, the thought of not being in my son's life every day, I want no part of that.
Yeah, that was a scene that got my husband too, and he's like, as he's driving, he's like, "I can't imagine what that drive." He's like, I would have just rather died."
Oh, yeah, like, I would,
Like,
like,
I would have just shot myself.
well, part of me was kinda like, as much because Neil was even telling him, like, "We gotta get out of here, you gotta leave Charlene," and he's like, "No, the sun sets and rises with her." Like, part of me was kinda like, I half expected him just to when that cop pulls out in front to check him out to make sure it wasn't actually Chris, part of me expected him to just be like, "You know what? Screw it, take me to jail."
Yeah, and because, like, at least in prison, like, you would still be able to see your kid on visitation.
Yeah.
Shitty as living in prison for the rest of your life is, but I don't know, I've never put myself in a position where I'd have to make that choice, so I can't really imagine what I would do.
Yeah.
And sort of stay on the straight and narrow and try not to rob anything. Did you So then we cut back to being with, Vincent Hanna. He's now separated from his wife. He's going back to his hotel room, and he finds his stepdaughter, and she's tried to commit suicide in his bathtub, which is
Awful.
such a
Awful. Yeah.
brutal scene to watch. And they don't skimp on showing any of it. There's no lovely cuts to, like, kinda hide what we're seeing. We see Natalie Portman literally in the bathtub, just cut completely up, floating in her own watery blood. And I there's some interviews with her talking about, like, how, like, damaging this scene was psychologically to do as, like, a because she's not very old in this, like here, I can
Mhm.
look it up.
Maybe 14? Because like I said, it was only her 2nd role, and she was really young even in The Professional.
She was, yeah, 14 when she shot Heat, and also, like, The Professional would be such a traumatic movie, like,
Mhm.
things like Natalie Portman's come out all right after doing those 2 films back to back. Pedophilia and suicide, like, back to back as a child is crazy. Where were her parents?
That would be the definition of trauma if I ever heard one, but that's another one, like, that's not even his kid biologically,
Mm.
but, like, having to find her like that and, like, stitch her like, tie her up so she's not doesn't have these open wounds. Like, even, like, I shed a couple of tears because, like, he's thinking on his feet. I don't know how well I would be able to think in that scenario just because that would just be so traumatizing. God, it's hard to watch, and it could have been more graphic. I mean,
Mhm.
if they wanted to. I'm glad that it wasn't more graphic than it was, but
Yeah.
that look on Justine's face when he walks in the hospital with her, just my stomach was on the floor. I was gutted at that point.
Just like another mother just like watching her like young daughter just go through something that you would never ever want anybody, let alone your own child, to be going through or feeling is crazy. Yeah, and like, Natalie Portman's character, like, viewing Al Pacino, like, as her actual dad, because like, we learned through this that her dad just, like, completely has like, her biological dad has completely abandoned her.
Does not care about her. We don't even actually ever see him.
No. So Hannah then takes her to the hospital. He's sort of waiting with Justine, and then this is when they decide that their marriage is never going to work, that they need to separate. But largely, it seems at that point for it to come full circle to a point where they are just like, it's not that we're bad people, it's that we can't be there for each other in the way that the other person needs.
There's 2 different worlds, and what their expectations of what their marriage should look like is it's just too different.
We then jump back to being with Neil. and he's with Edie, and this is a scene where he goes to try and kill Wingro in the hotel, and he poses as hotel security, triggers the fire alarm, and then kills Wingo in his hotel room. But Hannah's onto him, and this is where they have their big chase. And he sort of just has to make that decision. Like as he's walking out, he sees Edie in the car, and then he looks and he sees Hannah like down the street, and he's like has to make the decision: is he going to leave her in 30 seconds? And he does. He walks away.
I think it's kind of unrealistic to expect anything other than what happened.
Yeah.
But a part of me was like, you could have cut loose of her like 24 hours ago and saved both of you the heartache. And you like forced her multiple times to still stick with you. And you still did this at the end. I was so angry. Like, I still get angry every time that happens. And I'm just like, this poor woman is never going to recover from this relationship the rest of her life. She's just absolutely just emotionally screwed
Yeah.
the rest of her life.
Yeah, and as soon as yeah, she sees, like, Vincent, like, run after him, and it's just, like, this realization of, like, what have I gotten to? And, like, I think this, like, moment of inner panic, I'm like, "Oh my god, am I now implicated in whatever this guy is doing?"
100%.
We then have this awesome scene where Vincent Hannah is chasing Neil onto the tarmac of the airport. They're kind of stalking each other. Um, and then just sort of in the nick of time, Macaulay makes a mistake and Hannah shoots him and then holds his hand as he's dying. And the last lines of the film are told you I'm never going back. And yeah, I love like how sad this scene is for Al Pacino's character. Like he didn't want to I don't think he wanted to pull the trigger.
Mm-mm. I think it's a mixture of that for me, and then kinda the look on his face, like, he's obviously holding his hand, being like, "I got you, you're not gonna die alone." But also, he kinda has this look on his face like, "What do I do now?"
Yeah.
I mean, the chase is gone. He's probably never gonna face an adversary even that close to that caliber the rest of his professional career, and part of what gets him going is that chase, and so I kinda that with the amazing score at the end, it's a beautiful way to end the movie, but it's also very tragic.
Yeah. I'd like not to bring it back too much to The Dark Knight, but, like, who is the Batman without Joker? Like,
Yeah.
they're like and they discuss it in that diner scene, and Al Pacino's like, "No, like, my entire identity is putting people like you away." And there's so much mutual respect between the 2 characters, and then he's just, like, alone, and is just, again, like, lost his marriage in the same 10 minutes. Well, any final thoughts on Heat?
For anybody that's never seen it, if you like heist movies and you just like a really stacked cast and well-written movie, you gotta give it a shot. I know when I recommend it to people, when I say it's almost 3 hours, 9 times out of 10 people go, "Ugh,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like 3 hours," at least to me.
No, and I mean, if you want it, like, put it on for, like, a rainy day. Where you've got nothing to do all afternoon, like, that's a great time to watch a long movie. I think
Mhm,
plenty of long movies that are good. Shawshank is so long, and everyone loves that movie.
mhm. I as and kinda like what you were saying, when we asked about, like, why it wasn't recognized at the Academy Awards, it's a darn shame because it's to me, like I said, it's not an action movie, it really is a saga, kinda like what Michael Mann calls it, and the only thing that I kinda wish I could change about it, and it's only because have you seen Thief with James Caan?
Not in a really long time.
There's something about Michael Mann in the '80s, like the synthesizer, the color palettes, the only thing I wish I could maybe change is maybe have Heat in the '80s.
Yeah.
Just because I just there's something about the eight crime dramas in the '80s. There's just something different about it. That's the only thing I wish I could change about it, but otherwise, I think this is a dang near perfect movie. It just I can be in any mood. I try to only watch it once a year because I never wanna get tired.
Yeah. Yeah, I have those movies too. Yeah, this is yeah, I highly recommend this to anybody that hasn't seen it. It's definitely not like I know both Al Pacino and Robert De Niro are so many crime dramas, but this is very different. It's like to me borderline like a psychological thriller. Like it gets close.
Mhm,
It's so like you're like truly locked in the whole time. It very much feels to me like The Departed or like watching The Dark Knight. Like it's just this complete like psychological character exploration that isn't in like a typical like action flick.
mhm.
It's so good. It's well worth a watch. It holds up. This movie's 31 years old. it feels just as fresh as it did.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Can you tell
Thanks.
everybody where to find you, where to follow you on social media?
So I am on TikTok as Mr. Movie Guy at 26. Most of my stuff has to do with like physical media and stuff I already have in my collection. I love movies all the same. So anybody wants to give me a follow up, I'd definitely appreciate it.
Thank you so, so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, if you ever need another appearance, you let me know. Love to come on again.
Absolutely. Yes. You just name a film and I'll book you in.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Holly.
You're welcome.